David Young's body is alive. I never liked the countryside. I always felt more comfortable living in the big cities. My parents had to move out due to a witness protection program. My dad had witnessed a triple homicide. The only one that survived that night was a man named David Young. Police are looking for him. My dad pointed out his picture on the files. The problem is that David Young's records indicate that he's been diseased. Police didn't question my dad's sanity, as several other witnesses also said seeing David Young do it. And apparently, some people fake their deaths in order to start a new life, or simply get away from the authorities looking for them. It's midsummer now, and the place where we live is a property of 15 acres. Pretty big if you ask me. My parents decided to grow crops in it. My mom thought it would be a good idea to use the land, at least for something since it was big. They planted corn, tomatoes, spinach, amongst many other things. At first it was exciting to see the crops grow, but it became too much work for me, since anything that the crops needed, I was the first one to be told to do it. Rake around, clean the trash that the wind blew, scare the rodents away from it, and so on. It's been several weeks now, and the crops have gotten very big. The corn now towers over me, and you can't see much past the cornfield. I decided to walk through it, as it would help me gather my thoughts, and I really needed some time alone as well. I walked in the cornfield, but in the middle of this one, I found a scarecrow, one that I had not seen before. I figured my parents put it there as to not bother me scaring animals away. This scarecrow looked morbid, as if it was alive. And like many paintings with good perspective, its eyes followed me when I moved from one side to another. The scarecrow scared me. I turned to walk away from it and headed back to the house. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was following me. I began to walk fast. I quickly looked behind me, but the scarecrow wasn't following me. It wasn't even there. Why would I expect him to follow me? Maybe I had walked far enough to be out of his sight. I made it to the house and went to my room, which was on the second floor of the house. I looked out of my bedroom window, but I didn't see it. Maybe it was well hidden in the crops. My parents made it back home from work, and as I already forgotten the scarecrow, I went on about my life. I helped bring in some grocery bags in the house and then went on helping around the house. My mom was cooking dinner as my dad was working on an old tractor that was outside.
There are many hoses missing from this tractor. That's why it won't run.
My dad had found the problem on the tractor and said that as soon as he had money, he would buy them and fix the tractor. Having the tractor working would make things a lot easier to work on the land. It's bedtime now, and I'm getting ready for bed, and I notice how beautiful the moon is. The moonlight lit my room so well that I happened to stare at it from my bedroom window. Soon, I was interrupted. Someone started to throw pebbles at my window. I started to look around, but there was no one near the house. I looked out in the field and spotted it. My heart dropped. There was a scarecrow from earlier. I can feel it looking at me. The feeling was so overwhelming that I decided to close the curtains, and then I went to bed. In the middle of the night, my parents busted in my room and woke me up. Apparently, they had heard some tapping on the windows, but couldn't pinpoint which window it was. Then we heard the tapping again, and it was coming from the living room area. As they made their way to the living room, the tapping moved to the restroom window, and every time they went to go check, the tapping would move to a different window, and so on. My dad soon disregarded it, as it was probably a raccoon who was trying to nest around the house. My parents told me to get some sleep, and that tomorrow would be a busy day, as I was going to help my dad around the crops. They turned my bedroom lights off, then they closed my door. I lied in bed and turned to face the window. My heart started pounding. There was the outline of the scarecrow on my window. The moonlight made a clear silhouette of this one. I was very scared, yet curious as how this could have been possible since I was on the second floor. I walked towards my window and I opened the curtains to look outside my window. There it was. It had its side of the head pressed up against my window, as if it was trying to listen to whatever was going on in my room. I screamed in terror, and the scarecrow slowly turned his head to face me, then put one of his long, spindly fingers, which looked like they were made out of haystack, and he placed them on his gaping mouth and said,
Be quiet, kid.
I screamed for the second time and quickly closed the curtains as my dad was busting in my bedroom door.
What happened? Are you okay?
My dad was worried. I told him that something was at my window, to which he quickly went to go check. But as he opened the curtains, nothing was there. He asked me what it was. I quickly let him know that it was a scarecrow that he had placed in the cornfield. He looked at me worried and tells me that he has no scarecrow and quickly asks me for details on this scarecrow. After talking to my dad, he assures me that it was just a night terror and that I should drink some water and then go back to bed. To which I do. It's morning again. My dad wakes me up for breakfast. Then we head out to the fields and start to clean around it, raking and spreading pesticides. I enter the cornfield and start to look for the scarecrow, but no signs of it. My heart jumps as I hear a voice behind me. It was my dad. I show him the spot where I had seen the scarecrow, but again, he assures me that it was just a nightmare. We continue doing what we were doing until we finished. It's almost dark as the sun begins to set. My dad heads out to where the tractor is, making a list of parts that he's going to buy to get it back running. I help him with the list as he tinkers with the tractor a little more until we finally have it all listed. Once done, he starts to wash his hands and tells me to grab the flashlight so I can go collect the shovel, the rake, and the leaf blower from the fields. I grabbed the flashlight with dread in my heart, but I knew that I couldn't keep telling him about my fear as it would only make him angry. I start to walk towards the field with the flashlight and I can feel its presence. It's nighttime by this point as the sun had set and the skies were dark. I get to the items that I was supposed to retrieve, and on my way back to the house, I see it. There's the spot where the scarecrow is supposed to be, but it was just a stand that held it. The scarecrow wasn't on it. I heard my dad yelling in pain off in the distance, followed by the sound of the tractor cranking. I thought he must have hurt himself trying to get it started, but it sounded wrong. The feeling I had was wrong. Everything was wrong. The sound of the tractor started to get closer to me, and I knew that couldn't have been my dad since it was driving recklessly on the cornfield. I started to run in the opposite direction, as to not get run over by the tractor when I heard my mom yelling from the house. The tractor immediately left the cornfield and started making its way to the house. Soon, I heard my mom yelling in pain too, and at this point, I was petrified. I knew what was going on. I could feel something was wrong. After my mom yelled, I heard the tractor, and it sounded a lot smoother, though it started to make its way back to me. But after a minute of driving through the cornfield looking for me, I guess it gave up. I could hear the tractor still running, but there was no sign of my dad or mom. I slowly and carefully made it back to the house. I found blood puddles where my dad should have been, same to where my mom should have been as well. I stared at the blood puddles in disbelief, and suddenly I hear moving in the cornfield. I wiped my tears from my eyes just to see what was there, and there it was, the scarecrow again. I knew that I couldn't make a run for it, as the police station was a few miles from my house, and the keys to the car would have been a hard thing to find. I decided to run for the tractor that was still running in the cornfield, and I started to run into the cornfield. I saw the scarecrow put both of his hands on his head and rip it off. The head started to float over the cornfield as it was keeping the closed eyes on me as the scarecrow body ran headlessly through the cornfield, trying to get me. I was more terrified than ever. I felt like I was going to pass out, but I knew I had to keep running if I wanted to be alive. I made it to the tractor and began to drive it as fast as it would go towards town. I made it to the main road, and as I looked back in the rearview mirror, I could see the scarecrow putting his head back on his shoulders and making a gesture as if it was laughing uncontrollably. I floored it. Thankfully, that thing didn't follow me. I made it to town, and the streetlights revealed a note that was left on the tractor, one that I had not noticed. I opened it and I read it.
Your dad's veins make good hoses for the tractor, and your mom's tendons are very good conductors.
My body felt numb. My heart pounded throughout my whole body. I had stopped the tractor in front of the police station and realized why that thing was laughing so hard. Inside the engine was my dad's body, and as I opened the hood, I seen how his veins were halfway cut out of his body and placed around the engine. My mom's tendons were cut out too, and used as electrical conductors. Both my parents glanced at me with a painful and horrified look on their faces. They were still alive somehow. I was horrified too, just to imagine where this thing would have put my body in this tractor if it had gotten a hold of me.
Police, get on your knees and put your hands up.
I explained to the police. I gave them a vague description of the scarecrow, but of course, I didn't refer to it as a scarecrow. I simply told them it was a man. The sheriff matched the description to a man named David Young and showed me a picture of him. My heart dropped. That was him. The sheriff immediately placed me under arrest to investigate my parents' murder and assured me that David Young had been dead for 6 years and that they had proof. I know I will never convince them that it was him and not me who killed my parents, but no one would believe me that David Young's body is still somehow alive. When you witness something paranormal, there will always be people who believe in it, and of course, some that are skeptical. What if this skeptical non-believer is a sheriff's officer? You then become a victim to where realms collide. This story was written by me. If you like my stories and you wish to hear more, please give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe.